Okay.
That looks like it.
Okay, good. Thank you for being patient with me. This is a new experience for me, and we will get through. We are going to do this. And so, like I said, my name is Sue Armstrong, and I am the I used to work with RoCap, and now I am working over at the Center for Human Development. I am feeling a little nervous because I don't have my notes with me anymore. But what we're here today to do is to start a four-week training about the History and Hope curriculum. And that's a curriculum that was designed as a collective effort between a lot of people from Alaska came together and put a training together to support the understanding about adverse childhood experiences and how our early experiences in a variety of early experiences have impact in our brains and in our bodies. I want to pause a minute here and ask for some support. Is there a way for me to see my version?
So do you have two screens, Sue, or just one?
I have one.
Just one. I think you can only show what's on your desktop. So if you want to show us your notes, then you'll still have your notes. This is probably okay.
This is probably okay, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I will feel much better if I can do it this way. But I'll
yeah. Whatever works for you is fine.
Is that better? Can people still see the slides?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so the reason we're here is to look at, how does understanding ACEs and adverse childhood experience, how does that apply to your program? And so for the next couple of months, we'll be exploring that. In your email, you received a note-taking sheet and then another white paper. So if you wanted to use that note-taking form to kind of, it's put together in a way that we can, if there, any ideas pop up to you, you can pull that out each week and add to it. At the end of this presentation, there will be time for questions and answers, so that if we have questions, we can provide some dialogue and discussion. And also down towards the bottom, it talks about what are some things that pop into your mind right away that you want to do, and what are some things that you might want to kind of think about putting on your agenda for later on. So the Alaska Resilience Initiative is a collective impact initiative. It's a statewide program. It means that we bring together people from governments, tribes, nonprofits, school districts, faith communities, and so that we can have a common agenda. And the goal of the Alaska Resilience Initiative is mobilizing Alaska to end child maltreatment, intergenerational and systemic trauma through healing and strategic advocacy. There are a variety of work groups, and if you are interested in finding out more about this, the website is listed right there. Maybe write that down as one of your immediate to-dos or a little bit later to-dos. We also, a variety of these resources that you'll see throughout the presentation are on the website, because the Alaska Resiliency Initiative is trying to be as transparent as possible and provide resources and activities for anybody to use as they see fit in their programs. We'll work together to build a network to connect people from people that live in the same communities that are working on different projects, people that live in different communities that are working on similar projects. How can we work together so that we're not alone? And this curriculum, the History and Hope curriculum, is something that came out of this initiative. And in talking more about how this curriculum was brought together, we were a couple of years ago, a group of people came together and looked at what was going on around in Alaska, what resources and trainings were going on, and there were some. Alaska has been really involved in adverse childhood experience trainings. However, we were asked to put together something that was more culturally relevant, maybe more something that really incorporated more of the various Alaska values and practices that we have spread throughout the state, and so and that we bring in the fact that a lot of the things that different communities are told through their history, through their elders, are things that science has just now discovered. And so it's kind of giving that information that, oh, we've known this information, now we have the science that says some people need to hear the science, and some people they go, well, we've always known that. So that's what the History and Hope curriculum is trying to do. And why it is so important that what we do can help children have a safe and healthy childhood, because what we do know that what the things that we experience in our brains and our bodies come together and form pathways that impact us as we go on. And that if children have experienced things that are unsafe or unhealthy, that we want to provide them an opportunity to heal so they don't have to carry those into the childhood and into the next generation. Because we do know that we're not just ourselves. We are a collective of, we are our family, we are our community, and we are also the things that happen around us. And that is something that we will be talking about not this week, but in the next couple of weeks that come around. And so I wanted to do a little introduction of myself. Like I said, my name is Sue Armstrong. I'm currently the Outreach Clinic and Family Coordinator for UAA, the Center for Human Development, which means that I coordinate the neurodevelopmental clinics, the outreach neurodevelopmental clinics, and also something called a coordinator for something called Project Echo that I don't know if other people have heard about, but it's new to me. It's kind of really exciting. But prior to coming here, I had spent about 18 years in various Head Start programs as the mental health and disability coordinator. And latest in Anchorage. I'm also was the mental health and disability coordinator in Fairbanks, in New Mexico, and in St. Louis. And I provide this picture in my, sorry, my throat, in my trainings, because this is me. And this is when I'm just starting my professional life in Fairbanks. I was a kid from the Midwest that got sent up to Alaska to do a volunteer program called the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. And I was welcomed into the Head Start program there. And after Head Start, I went and worked for the infant learning program in Fairbanks, and really had met lots of great people, both through staff and families as well. And but in doing the work with Head Start and infant learning program, I worked directly with families. And there are children and families that I still think about today, because some of them I think about because while we were working together, they came to a place where they may, sometimes people say they woke up, or they came to connect what experiences they were having and how to move forward in a positive way to help the development of their child. But I also work with families that I wish I had known more information. I wish I had known more about maternal depression. I wish I had known more about abuse and neglect, and how to support families, how to recognize when parents are reaching out for help, but not saying, I need help. They're doing it in a variety of ways. and so I know I would have been much more effective had I known what do we always say, you know, I wish I would have known, wish I would have known more. But there were things that I knew inside me. Some people say it's intuitive. There's just things that you know that that put you in the position that you choose to, your career you choose to be in. And there are just things that you know when you're meeting people and you listen to their stories. But I wish I would have known some of the science behind it. I wish I would have known more strategies of what to do, how to connect with families and children. And especially if I had a community-wide system that shared the same language, I think that maybe I would have more positive, I feel more positive about the outcomes that I accomplished, or that interactions I had with families that I wouldn't look back kind of longing or wishing. So that's me. And so that's what we're moving forward with the History and Hope. You know, how can we have a common language where we recognize that trauma, trauma is pretty, it's pretty typical. There's people experience trauma in a variety of ways, and the way that their community and family and themselves interact with that situation, that can partly determine the outcome of the trauma. And so this is our roadmap. This is the History to Hope roadmap. We have our introduction. Today we are going to do a couple of brain body activities, because that was one of the things that we were asked to do. How do we provide some resources and actual things to do when people are experiencing when they have to talk about difficult things, when they have to switch from one activity to a next. What are some resources that we can use on a daily basis that can help support the people that we work with? And we will also be talking about the ACE study, the original ACE study, which ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, and also briefly what's going on in Alaska. And then in the next 2 Fridays, we will be using the socio-ecological model, looking at not just a person in themselves, but also how does their family impact them? How does their community, what kind of impact does the community have? What type of impact has policy and legal decisions made on that in that family and in that community? And then also looking historically, what are some of the impacts that have gone on historically in Alaska and in the world that have impacted how ACEs affect us. And then finally, on the last session, we'll be really talking about solutions. And this slide says solutions in education, but really it's solutions in our community, in our programs, and in our agencies. So if you haven't marked your calendars, mark your calendars, and I look forward to continuing this next 4 months. And so this is I forgot to take that slide out. And we can look at adverse childhood experiences and just go, okay, this is just what we know. But we have to take into account what we've already known, what has been passed down culturally, what we know about what science is discovering about what goes on in the brain and what goes on in the body during when people experience traumatic situations, and also educational. How does trauma and adverse childhood experiences affect us in the educational setting? Sorry. And also, this is a collective. So we're pulling information from a variety of places. We have some experts in the science, and then epidemiology. That's a hard word for me to say. And that people look at and their neurodevelopment. How does our brain work when it is impacted by trauma? How does our brain work when it has been when it's thriving? And how can it also recover, laying down new pathways? So I do want to, sometimes I'm going to read from my slides on the right, just because I want to make sure I get this information correctly. But, you know, we've had the opportunity to work with folks like Laverne Dementive. I don't want to say her name wrong. Dementina, who can help me out here? Dementina, who I do know her. I just
Dementive.
Dementive. Okay, I had it right. Who teaches at the School of Social Work and is also a Degaton Athabascan. And we also have worked with Linda Chamberlain. Like I said, she's a famous epidemiologist. There's my tongue's not awake yet. And she really has brought a lot to Alaska. She lives in Homer, and has really helped us incorporate what it looks like to move forward with this this information, and how can we heal from intergenerational trauma or historical trauma, and that our brains really do hold on to this information. And so there are things that we will be talking about and learning, and we're about to get to one, that we can practice ourselves, and then we in turn can turn around and provide those to our clients, or to our staff, or to a friend who is experiencing a situation. So here's our first one, because we will be talking about sensitive situations and information. Some of this information people may have heard before. Sometimes this may be new information. And so we really want to protect ourselves and hear the information, but know that we're in a safe place. So this first brain body healing movement is called resting in your safe place. And if you see the picture of the person on the slide, that's what we're going to do. And so we really do want to be in a protective environment. So for this, hopefully, for the hour that we have, we can set things aside and really kind of take in this information and see how we can incorporate it into our lives, but also incorporate it into the lives of your clients and into your programs. And so, oops, not that one. There we go. I want to make sure we do this right. So we want to. So right now, yes.
I think you need to advance the next slide. We just see it in the little corner there.
Is the one that's showing, say, resting in your safe place?
No.
2. No.
No. It's in the next. We can see it on the right above your notes. There we go.
Okay. Sorry, I'm seeing one thing. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so everybody can kind of get comfortable. If you're sitting, stay sitting. If you're not sitting, maybe sit up a little bit. So this is an activity for protecting our heart. Our brain does gather information, and our body gathers information, and it flows from the left side of our body to the right side of our body and back up again. It always, but our heart is where our blood, our blood and our pumping. But we also have the feelings too that are associated with the heart. So we want to take put your right hand on your heart and put your left hand over it. You just want to sit in a comfortable position and kind of make sure your ears aren't up by your shoulders. And close your eyes if you're comfortable, or just lower them. We're just going to take deep breaths in. Take about 3 or 4 deep breaths in, but we're wanting to focus your breath to your heart. So when you breathe in, see if you can get your breath to surround your heart, and then breathe out anything that you might be holding on to or any apprehension you might have, and then breathe in and create a safe place for this information. So I'll just count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for I'm trusting that that was participated in, since I'm the only face that we can see. But this is also something that you can use yourself if you're entering into a place where you might be having a difficult conversation, or and then also teaching this to the teens that you work with or the families that you work with, because sometimes the most difficult conversations are the best ones to have, but it can also help us self-regulate. Like I said, oh, my screen sharing was paused. I'm not sure what's going on. I have a screen that says my screen sharing is paused, and there are a variety of activities that we're going to be sharing throughout this next couple of weeks. And also, Joy, can you see the?
We could see the next brain body healing movement centering.
Okay, because I'm on group agreements now.
We see that in the next slide space on the right. And if you accidentally pushed, it could be, if you go back up to the top, you may have accidentally pushed pause sharing. There's a button.
I'm pushing play, resume share. And it's not doing anything. I wasn't touching anything when it went to pause.
Okay.
But I'll keep talking, and we can.
Yeah, why don't you do that? Maybe it will catch up.
You know, we will be having time for sharing towards the end of this, and the History and Hope curriculum has borrowed the group agreements from the First Alaskan Institute, in which the understanding that in every chair there's a leader. Speak to be understood, listen to understand, be present, be engaged. We are responsible for our experience, respect differences, step up, step back, respect our time together, and take care of ourselves and each other. Is it?
That worked.
Okay. We'll work out these bugs by the next time. And so as we move into the ACEs study, I want you to think about a child in your program, and a lot of what the stuff that, like I've said, there were some things that I just kind of knew, and so there may be things that throughout this presentation you go, well, I know that. Well, but then you think, how did you learn that? How do you know that? And there's some things we just know. And there's some things that we can connect the science or research to now, okay, I knew this, and this is what it means to know that. And so what I want you to do right now is to think of a client that you've worked with, or a child that you know. Think about that client that maybe the first one that pops into your mind, or a child that you've been thinking about recently. And think about one that has struggles in academics, one that has severe, if you know about their class at school attendance, severe attendance problems, who may have difficulty behaving in school, somebody who's frequently sick. Now, think about what are the things that might be contributing to those areas in their lives. What we know, what research tells us, is that children who are experiencing overwhelming amounts of stress in their home life or elsewhere, because it doesn't just happen at home, or elsewhere, are at increased concern for all 4 of these problems. And when there are the things that we really struggle with in our educational setting, and these are the things that also lead for children receiving interventions in your programs, rather than the prevention and the intervention model. So sometimes by the time we kind of put pieces together, we have children that are already experiencing, are in the juvenile justice system, or that their families have been separated because of stresses and traumas that are going on in their lives. And so these are what we want to address when we talk about the overwhelming stressors that children are struggling with. And so we're going to move on to the ACE study now, and I guess we don't want to add anything to your plate, but really our trauma is the plate. It already exists. It's already there, and what we're dealing with. I don't know everybody's job title, so think about yours, what yourself is as a coordinator or as a program manager, but also think about yourself as a community member, a parent, a grandparent, and the things that our communities are experiencing, our children, our families are experiencing. They can make our jobs really difficult, and so having this perspective that there is sometimes an answer to the whys, and it's through experiences that children have had in their past, that adults have had in their past, and that children are having in their near past, or they're now in their future. We can kind of have a common language around them, and so when somebody says, "Oh, that's traumatic stress," you can have an understanding of what that means. And so I'm going to start by sharing the Adverse Childhood Experience Study. You might have heard it called ACEs, the ACEs study, and it's a study that started in it had a study of 17,000 patients in San Diego, California, and it's something that this is a study that was done in the 1990s. They were wondering, what are these stressors that people are experiencing that are why are people continuing to get sick? Why can't our patients just get better? Why do they keep falling backwards? What are these patterns that are emerging? And what they found was that I want to make sure I get this right, so I do want to read this. And so what they found is that when we experience traumatic experiences in our childhood, they follow us throughout our as a collective whole. So as a public health model, a group of people who may have experienced traumatic experiences as a child, that affects their health outcomes as they grow older. And it's also something that may have already been known in traditional wisdom with Alaska Native American Indian cultures, and other cultures have always known that if a child is traumatized early in life, that it can affect them for their whole life. And that conversely, that if children are well cared for, they will make it into healthy adults. And there is a quote that we like to use from Frederick Douglass, the abolitionist, that it's easier to build a strong child than to repair a broken man. And so the Kaiser study, and this is a study that was done, like I said, in 1990s, and it looked at from the data that they gathered, they identified 10 what they called adverse childhood experiences. There were 5. There's a way to remember it is 5 that happened to people and 5 that happened around them. So they looked at things like physical abuse, They looked at sexual abuse. They looked at emotional neglect and abuse. They looked at how many of the respondents, the 17,000 respondents, how many of them had experienced, had substance abuse. The adults around them had experienced substance abuse. Whose parents were separated or divorced. How many parents, if your parents were died, were there caregivers that experienced mental illness, and on and on and on. And the results that they found were that of those 17,000 participants, that 28% of them had experienced physical abuse, that 23% of them had had a parent who had a parent either pass away or they had been separated from their parents through divorce. That 21% of the people had reported experiencing sexual abuse. And when they took this information and they did all their data stuff to it, they discovered that ACEs are highly interrated. Where somebody has experienced one adverse childhood experience, they've usually experienced another adverse childhood experience. So they can build on each other. So they found that 87% of the time that where there was one ACE, there was also another adverse childhood experience. And so this just is another breakdown based off the 1990s study, the Kaiser study, that the number of ACE experience. There were 33% of the people who reported that they had not experienced any adverse childhood experiences. They probably had other, they may have had other experiences that didn't fit into that questionnaire. And then moving forward, there were 16% of the population that reported that it had 4 or more ACE, adverse childhood experiences. And the most important thing that came out of this study, well, one of the most important things is that when they looked at this, and this is something that has been duplicated any time that a study has been done, whether it's been done in Alaska, whether it's been done throughout the United States, in individual states, is that the ACE, when you get the ACE score together and you look at health problems, there's something called the dose-response relationship. Whether you look at people when tobacco use, whether you look at the liver disease, if you look at prevalence of suicide, of exposure to HIV/AIDS, obesity, they look at that the relationship, it steadily goes up the more the adverse childhood experiences somebody or a group of people experiences. And this is, like I said, something that's been replicated over and over. So these are just a few to look at. There were the suicide attempts, that they go up exponentially. If you think about the things that people experience that might lead to, suicide attempts, that when there's an overwhelming amount of stress put onto a person, that might be the case. These are also other medical conditions that somebody may, the risk it increases based off of that information. And that there was a study done that this was one study so this doesn't necessarily correlate throughout across the board, but an ACE score of 4 or more had nearly the double risk of cancer with one of the studies that was done. And so we're just seeing that what we're looking at is how do we decrease the experiences that children have, and also then if we know what people have experienced, how do we kind of help support them in that manner. And so what we do know that poor health outcomes, poor health choices may lead to adult poor health. It doesn't all. We all know the 100-year-old person who swears by their whiskey and cigarette a day. So it's not person by person, but this is kind of an overall look at things, and it's the adoption of risk behaviors is a way of coping with stress, and it's the way of self-medicating and developing those unhealthy patterns that might come up. And so, but we're also going to talk about ways in which the adversity affects us and what we can do about it. But what we do know is that the power is really powerful for medicine to understand, so the medical providers to understand that the overwhelming stress when a child is developing, things like obesity or cancer, chronic pain, autoimmune disorders, looking at what have people experienced that has led to this concern. You know, what are we looking at on a long term? Are we looking back far enough to find out what's the cause of this concern? For children, we have the health outcomes in early childhood that are related to stress. It can be developmental delays, failure to thrive. In childhood, we're looking, you know, people, those health outcomes of being sick, chronically sick, and if you're chronically sick, you may miss school. You may miss out on opportunities to interact with your peers, behavioral problems in school. And as adolescents, some of the things that continuously go on forward are leading to headaches, diabetes, teen pregnancy, abdominal pains. And so once again, if you're sick and you don't feel good, you may not be going to school, and then you will get farther behind in school. So we're just looking at what this looks like. And this is a slide of all of the states that have been participating in the ACE information. Alaska was one of them that started, although we're in the wrong part of the map. We started doing this work in 2013, and
Sue, can
yes.
I interrupt you again? The slides are not advancing again.
What is wrong?
So I don't know if you go up and try to do what you did earlier.
I'm pushing the resume share, and it's just staying as a play. It says resume share. I click on it.
So I just requested remote control. Did something come up on your end?
Let's see.
Why don't you continue? Oh, something changed. Did you change what you
approved it?
Okay.
It was behind my screen, so it wasn't showing up.
Okay, I'll see if I can. But now what I'm seeing is not. Okay, now you're on the right place.
Jeez Louise, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let's just keep going.
Okay, you clicked for me.
Okay, I will do that.
This is just showing the dose response that Alaska adults who reported, you know, diagnosed with asthma goes up as the ACEs go up. Continue. Depressive, these are just looking at the slides of things that might impact the clients that you work with, so that you can kind of see what it's important to, I think, to know the Alaska information rather than just something that was done in the 1990s. What does the current Alaska information tell us? So we can go through these slides. Just looking at that dose response, people using, you know, reporting limited activity due to health problems, not being able to get out as much, and that may lead to depression, may lead to lack of money for jobs. Continue. Adults experiencing low food security. So if an adult is experiencing low food security, then in turn their children are probably experiencing low food security. And so that is like the down and dirty of just the ACE information. And so that kind of seems like pretty, to me, the ACE information is pretty heavy. It says, oh, but it's stuff that we know. We know that people, you know, that I want to say that we experience traumatic events in Alaska. We know that communities experience them. We know that individuals experience them. We know that as a state we experience them. And so the next couple of slides are we're going to see these a couple more times, because this is the one thing that kind of the takeaway for me is when I hear about traumatic experiences, things that people have, their health outcomes. When we're working with a client and you're just about to throw your hands up in the air and be like, just go away, I can't handle this anymore. Or working with a boss, or working with a colleague or a peer, is that if we can kind of take this information that we know that trauma exists, and that we don't always know people's stories. So instead of thinking about, like, have you ever thought, like, God, what is wrong with you? You can think, what has happened to you, and how can I help? That is one thing that has really, that this work that I've been learning more about. That's one thing I try to put the neural pathways down in my brain, is to think, what have you experienced, and what do you bring to the table? Both that can definitely support your story and help us, and also that there may be barriers there that, whether it's trust, whether it's security, whether it's, that how do they know that you're going to continue to show up, and how can I help? If you want to click forward. And the things to realize is that that we'll be talking about the trauma-informed approach, and that trauma exists, and that the trauma-informed approach recognizes how trauma affects all individuals, including ourselves. So I've worked with people that have said, well, okay, I get it. It's for them. No, we have to see how, when we read about things, when we see things out in our world, or when we reflect back on our lives, how are the situations that we know about, how have they impacted us? And then putting knowledge into practice. So how do we make changes, or do we need to make changes? Are the things that we're doing in our agencies pretty trauma informed, and say, no, this is why we're doing it. These are why these positive impacts take place. And the next slide. And so the other form that you got in your email was, it was a printout. It's based off of the education model, but reading through it, there were, I believe there are bits and pieces that can be taken out, and you may want to share this with your, if you have a collaboration with your school district, or if you work with a handful of teachers, this may be a resource that you want to take with you the next time you're in a meeting or making a connection. But it's looking at the connection between ACEs and resilience. And this is I do believe this is one of the resources that is on the Alaska Resiliency Initiative page. And if not, if you'd like more copies of it, just let me know, and I can probably get them. But it's really looking at, how do we take this, and today was the bare bones that we know, that traumatic experiences that people have, that happen to people when they're younger, when they're 0 to 18. That's what ACEs are. They're looking at traumatic experiences from birth to 18, how they impact us as we go on down the lifespan. And so for the next couple of sessions, we will be looking at what it does look like with the lifespan. It will be a little bit more interactive, and also there will be some videos that we do share. And so if you click to the next slide. So I guess the question I have is, did anybody think of, did any questions come up with my kind of sporadic, slideshow presentation? More questions people want answered, or any follow-up that you're recommending, or thoughts that people thought about, what did you write down for your next steps? Or what did you write down for things that could possibly happen in the future?
Sue, would you like me to unmute everyone, or would you prefer that they write it in the chat box?
And if people feel brave and want to talk, they're more than welcome to And are they able to unmute themselves just so we don't get a lot of feedback?
Yes, you can unmute yourself. Anyone who would like to ask a question, or you can also type it in the chat box if you don't have a mic.
And if you don't want to share, that is okay. And if you want to give Joy and Tara some feedback afterwards, and they can provide it to me for the next 2 weeks, that is also okay. And did that switch over?
Yes, it did.
Oh, what's going on? And so that, you know, a brain body movement that we also incorporate is called switching. So it's an activity we can do when we're moving from one activity to another activity. So this activity was probably a lot of listening and taking information in, and you know, what you may be doing in 5 minutes may be going to lunch, or it may be going to do a presentation, or it may be you're going to pick up your family to do something. So when your brain body is, when you're switching activities, it's good to let your body know that's what's occurring. And so kind of to close it out, we're going to do, I would like to do this activity called switching. Before we do it, I just wanted to give one last glance at what the website looks like. If you wanted to go explore it, see what resources, there's a page where you can request a training for your agency or for your parent group. There's people doing trainings throughout Alaska, and there are funds through this program for people to travel out to do trainings. And it's not just me. There's a lot of people doing them. So the request just needs to come in, and you'll get a response from somebody. So if there's no questions or comments, we're gonna do this activity, and then we'll be good. Okay. So once again, get in a comfortable position, and this just helps your left brain talk to your right brain, your right body and talk to your left body. So we're going to cross your left leg over your right leg, and then you're going to do the opposite of your hands, of your arms. So if you're going to cross, I have to look, cross your right hand over your left hand, outstretched, and intermingle your fingers, intertwine your fingers. Then you're going to curl them up, kind of like you're a pretzel. And then you're going to close your eyes or lower your eyes, whichever you're comfortable with. And then you're going to take deep breaths. And you can do these activities you don't want to do them for too short of a time, but you can do them for as long as you feel comfortable doing them outside of this presentation. So we're just going to do 3 deep breaths. And when you're doing these breaths, have your breath kind of go throughout your body. And you're going to breathe in fresh air, and breathe out anything that you might be holding on to that you don't really want inside to when you're going to your next activity. When you breathe in, you want to think about all the things you do want to hold on to. And so we're going to do that for a count of 3. So 1, 2, 3. And then slowly open your eyes or raise your eyes. Uncross your legs. Uncross your arms. Maybe do a little stretch. Oh, my neck is cracked. And I don't know what you guys have next. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sue. I'm going to reclaim host abilities here. And just say thank you to Sue and to everyone for taking time out of your day and learning some new information or hearing some information in a new way. Help us improve by taking the short survey that Tara will be sending out to all participants. And then just to let you all know that a recording of the webinar will be available. The resourcebasket.org website is under construction right now, so we will send the webinar or a link to the webinar to you via email. We'll figure out where to post it and let you know where it is. And if you have any questions or comments or recommendations for future webinars, please feel free to send us an email at resourcebasket@ruralcap.com. Again, thank you everyone for participating. And just a reminder that our next session is next Friday, November 2nd, same time, 11 to 12. And we hope to see you then. Thank you. Have a great day.